And what do you say about white supremacy today?
Part of what I say is that white supremacy, first of all, isn't a white thing. It's part of this culture. It's part of how all of us have been taught to think about difference. Who's better, who's inferior, who's superior. I prefer white supremacy to racism precisely because it says that we're all being socialized to think along certain dualistic lines. And that the notion of that which is light or white being better, that which is dark or black being worse, bad, inferior, is something that everyone in the culture is socialized to think.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Town Hall, a Black Queer podcast, the podcast where we journey through a theme by sharing stories, music, poetry, and art of varying depth and hilarity. And today's episode is Historical Icons and Activists. It's no surprise it is Black History Month, and it's our second episode of season 3 and the first part of a special 2-part episode. And we are so happy to bring this episode to you during Black History Month. Happy Black History Month, Bob.
And to you too. And also a special note to you all is that we're going to be doing episodes once a week now. So, you know, our days of twice a month are behind us, and we are now going to be hitting y'all with weekly doses of Town Hall, a Black Queer podcast. Thank you all for like supporting this podcast. The fact that we're on our 4th season is 3rd season. I went to Atlanta Public School.
I was like,
that was me hoping for the future. That was me hoping for the future. The fact we're on our 3rd season is really amazing.
I think so.
Like I'm just like
it's
I'm
the
proud
3rd
of
season already. I'm proud of us too. It was born out of Black Queer Town Hall, which was born out of your brain, which was born during the pandemic, and I'm glad that there is a space for a program like this and time in each of your schedules, hopefully every week now, to listen to the stories of the people that we bring to you. And today, obviously, we have some really special stories. It does feel kind of interesting to like do something that's so Black and queer, and it's about Black folks. And it's Black History Month, so it doesn't feel like there's anything like different happening for me. It feels like it's always Black History Month.
Our podcast is pretty. Yeah, every month's Black History Month over at Town Hall. But I guess what we're doing is now focusing more so on history than the present.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Now, do you listen? I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention over the past couple of years legislatively, there have been some elected officials who've used sort of identity as a wedge issue in terms of politics, and announced their plans to remove, Black history curriculums from, grade school and high school and different age groups around the country, a lot of them in the South. And, under the guise that the students are being forced to hate white children by studying something called what they're calling critical race theory, which is not true. Critical race theory, as we now know, is a college level academic course. And so, but what has happened is sort of pulling back on the very accurate and honest historical accounts of Black people in our school system. And as if that weren't bad enough, a lot of these stories have been removed from the regular textbooks, right? And so I remember, I don't know if we read this together, Bob, but like there was the story of Rosa Parks in a very recent textbook draft, was basically to remove that she was boycotting the bus system because of the treatment of Black people in the country, but in Montgomery, and that she was just breaking the law. It just basically aimed the story in this history book for children or high school students to read was Rosa Parks was a criminal who broke the law and was not following the rules. That's it.
Rosa Parks, notorious bus criminal. Crime. Now, let me tell you about the main criminals in history. We got Bonnie and Clyde. We got Al Capone. We got El Chapo, and the most dangerous of all, Rosa Parks. So tired she couldn't even stand up. This, like, I mean, it's I hope that kids can read and be like, well, what? I feel like some students would be like, I want to use my critical brain and ask why
No critical thinking here.
All right. No. Let me. Cognitive thinking. Yes. There we go. And ask, well, why was this lady sitting down? What was the point of this? Like, I don't know. It is very odd. I'm wondering if they're going to do the same thing with figures who aren't black, like Mahatma Gandhi.
Oh no, if they're brown, for sure.
Just some guy.
If they're brown, for sure.
Yeah. Are they going to be like, he was just a rebel rouser? I don't know what his problem was. I don't know what was up with that Gandhi guy. He just did not want peace.
They're trying to, they were doing it in the same vein as like sort of going back and sort of the term whitewashing it sounds redundant if we're saying that they're whitewashing the historical accounts and stories of, like a lot of these Confederate generals and soldiers and people who slave owners and people like that, going back and sort of whitewashing their stories to position them as just heroes in the United States without being accurate about some of the atrocities that they were involved in. And so it's a real reversal of everything, that they were trying to do. So this is why it's so important that we are bringing these two particular episodes to you all.
So should we hop into our first icon?
Yes, icons. Yeah, we're bringing icons to ya.
So what's really exciting with this first icon is that a friend of mine plays him in the Netflix
name drop
film Coleman Domingo.
When did you meet Coleman Domingo, bitch?
A friend. I met Coleman Domingo. I don't know how I met Coleman. Maybe at a like some sort of a premiere, and he was just really friendly, and he was like, let's be buddies and hang out. So I went to his house for some parties, and he's just a really lovely, obviously lovely, brilliant actor, very smart writer, and obviously most recently and notably, he was Mr. in the remake of The Color Purple.
Well, I met Coleman Domingo in 2002, 3.
Oh, work.
He's a friend of mine too, bitch.
He's not just a friend of yours. She's not a friend of yours. She's a friend of mine, darling. That's my favorite.
Yep. And he's also nominated for many awards, including Academy Award nominated this year for his performance in Rustin, which is I don't mean to, his latest performance. I don't want to spill the tea.
You bury the lead. So, Pep, without further ado, since we've given a little bit of a clue, let's get into our first cultural icon, Bayard Rustin.
Bring to you the executive director of the March on Washington, the man who organized this whole thing, Mr. Bayard Rustin.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first demand is that we have effective civil rights legislation, no compromise, no filibuster, and that it includes public accommodation, decent housing, integrated education, FAPC, and the right to vote. What do you say?
All right, so Bayard Rustin was a prominent figure in the American Civil Rights Movement, known for his tireless advocacy for racial equality and his commitment to non-violent protest. Born in Westchester, Pennsylvania, Pep, that's my hood. Your state. Rustin became deeply involved in social activism at a very, very young age. Rustin's early activism focused on labor rights, pacifism, and socialism. However, his most significant contributions came in the realm of civil rights. He played a crucial role in organizing the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Yes, that very March on Washington, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic I Have a Dream speech. Rustin was the chief organizer of the event, demonstrating his exceptional organizational skills and commitment to the principles of nonviolent resistance. Despite his influential role, Rustin faced discrimination within the civil rights movement because of his homosexuality. Yes, a queer man was at the helm of organizing the March on Washington, and that was very controversial at the time. His sexual orientation led to challenges, including his marginalization by some leaders within the very movement. Nevertheless, Rustin persisted in his commitment to justice and equality. Rustin's legacy extends beyond his work in the civil rights movement. He continued to advocate for various social and economic justice issues throughout his life, including LGBTQ+ rights and global peace, which is obviously a large undertaking. His influence is acknowledged as instrumental in shaping the strategies of nonviolent protest and civil disobedience that became central to the broader struggle for civil rights. In 2013, President Barack Obama posthumously awarded Rustin the Presidential Medal of Freedom, recognizing his invaluable contribution to the advancement of civil rights and social justice. Bayard Rustin's life and work serve as a testament to the power of perseverance, activism, and the enduring impact of those who strive for equality and justice for all. I think that a lot of the people who are in the activism space, specifically in the nonviolent activism space, probably don't even know how much they have to thank Rustin for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, regardless of whether they're in the activism space or not, they probably are very unaware, at least until now. They probably grew up very unaware of Bayard's, efforts and his connection. The fact that he was targeted for being gay, which was obviously a struggle. I would imagine that I don't know, but I mean, of course, after having seen the movie and reading a little bit about him, his experience as an out gay man probably was isolating to a large extent. And so, yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that didn't know much about him until recently. And, I think as kids, there's so little that we get to hear about these Black cultural icons anyway, that's all squeezed into maybe a month or like a chapter or something in a history book, that they're barely giving us the full story about somebody like MLK. So they're definitely not giving us the full story on his gay, sort of right-hand person,
Community organizer, yeah.
So.
And also, I know that it was, for me, being queer in the 90s and the early 2000s was tough.
Yeah.
Rustin was born in 1912. That means he was in his 20s in the 30s. Y'all, the 1930s. So during the Roaring 20s,
while Malcolm X is getting a conch
years
on his head, that's like slang for getting perm and relaxing.
I know what conking is.
I know you know, but I'm telling them kids because it's kind of old lady speaking.
Well, I actually learned the term conked from reading Malcolm X's autobiography. I didn't even know the term because they weren't saying conked when I was.
Oh, yeah, kid. That's from military, Black military, early, war, talk. My grandfather used to want to do conch on my head, and he did.
I wonder if that's a northern. I wonder if saying getting your hair conked. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. My family never said conked, but I remember reading Malcolm X's autobiography and being like, conked. Oh my God, I never heard the term.
I don't know why either. I mean, he was in New York, so maybe it's northern. My grandfather's from Kentucky, though. I don't know. I think it's more of an age thing.
Even though you're from above the Mason-Dixie, you be saying some country shit sometimes. I'd be like, Pep got some country somewhere.
It's my grandfather.
There's some country going on somewhere with Pep.
Our producer just came on and told us that it's based on the name is from a lye-based gel, which people used to straighten their hair back then, called Congoline. And thank you, Charlene, for telling us about the Congoline. And so that's what people would get. That's what they got the word from. Anyway, sorry, I did not mean to.
Did you ever get your hair conked? Did you ever get your hair conked when you were a kid, Pep? I got my hair. I got my hair. I mean, I'm not saying conked. I never say conked. I got my hair permed in 8th grade. And I was the first boy in my school to get it
Oh,
done. And I started a trend. And baby, my hair was, when I tell
laid.
you, ev- when I tell you, I started the trend at my school, at Morrow Middle School. So everyone who went to Morrow Middle School in my class, you all can thank me. I never did it again. After that, I went straight back. I went right back to my afro and my locks. Actually, by I think 10th grade, I started my locks. But in 8th grade, I did have a short S curl face.
We're from a different generation, honey. I mean, you're laughing about it now and you brought it back, but like when I was going to school, it was still in.
S curls, yeah. No, S curls were
S
big.
curls were big in the
like,
80s, honey.
yeah. Oh, you think S curls still in business?
Honey, I've got some sitting in my bathroom
S-curls
right now. Yes, S curls, texturizers are in. Now listen, they're reformulating. Yeah, they still have it, honey. It's like, you know, now Jerry Curl no longer. They're not really making actual Jerry Curl anymore because that was it was S Curl and Jerry Curl, which was the companies. You know, like you can get a Jerry Curl, I guess, but like it moved to S Curl from Jerry Curl, and they don't make that anymore. Where you used to have to spray the activator on it to get the curl to like pop back. It was just basically conditioner that you spray the activator, but everybody made it seem like it was some scary thing. Anyway, the point is, yes, I had it. We all had it. Yeah, I have a relaxer in my hair now. It is just the way it is. But they're probably they're, you know.
My hair is so relaxed, it all fell out. My hair is so relaxed, it all fell out of my head. This is how relaxed I am.
Your hair was like, we can't hold on anymore.
little too relaxed.
Yeah.
All right, shall we keep going?
I think we should. I'm digging hearing about these cultural icons, and the next one I'm really excited about. Y'all, we use quotes a lot on here. We talk about things, and I know I've invoked this woman probably at least 2 or 3 times on this podcast. I hope so. I definitely have in conversation. But someone you should definitely know about is Bell Hooks, who was born Gloria Jean Watkins on September 25th, 1952, and was a highly influential American author. I'd say still is a very influential American author, and was a cultural critic and a feminist theorist. And really shifted the conversation when it comes to modern, third wave feminism, in my opinion. She adopted the pen name Bell Hooks, and it's really important that we know that this is lowercase, as a tribute to her maternal great-grandmother. Hooks' work has left us with an indelible mark on the fields of feminism, race, and cultural studies, challenging conventional thinking and encouraging intersectional perspectives. Bell Hooks emerged as a prominent voice in feminist discourse during the late 20th century, and her groundbreaking book, Ain't I a Woman? Black Women in Feminism, published in 1981, critically acclaimed intersectionality, race, gender, and class. Hooks argued for a more inclusive feminist movement that considered the experiences of women of color, acknowledging the unique challenges that they faced. And Hooks was a fervent advocate for intersectionality, a concept that emphasizes the interconnected nature of social categorizations like race, class, and gender, and how they overlap and intersect. Now, through her writings, she urged for a more inclusive feminism that took into account the diverse experiences of women across different backgrounds, challenging predominantly white-centric perspectives within feminist history and theory. Beyond her written works, Hooks was a distinguished educator. She held positions at various institutions, including Yale University, Oberlin College, and the City College of New York. And her commitment to education extended beyond the academia as she sought to make complex ideas accessible to a much broader audience through her engaging writing style and public speaking. Now, in addition to her feminist and educational contributions, Hooks delved into cultural critique and media analysis. She examined the portrayal of race and gender in popular culture, highlighting how media perpetuates stereotypes and influences societal norms. Her book, Real to Race, R-E-E-L, to race, Race, Sex, and Class at the Movies, published in 1996, exemplifies her insightful analysis of media's role in shaping perceptions. And her legacy is characterized by her relentless pursuit of social justice, equality, and a more inclusive understanding of feminism. Her works continue to inspire scholars, activists, queens, and thinkers globally, challenging them to critically engage with issues of race, gender, and class. Bell Hooks passed away on December 15th, 2021, but her ideas and her teachings endure, shaping ongoing conversations about intersectionality and social change.
Bell Hooks, a cultural critic, a feminist, a theorist, a political activist, is recognized as one of America's leading intellectuals. She is a distinguished professor at the City College of New York. She takes her name from her great-grandmother in recognition of female legacy, and she uses lowercase lettering to reflect her wariness about ego and fame. Her previous books, Ain't I a Woman and Black Looks, provide new scholarship, mixing academic writing with personal testimony. Killing Rage, Ending Racism is her latest book, and I'm pleased to have her back here. Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Last time you were here, we were having a conversation, and I had a bunch of letters, this is true, saying, why did you allow those men, these were African-American men in this case, to beat up on Bell? And I said, Bell Hooks can take care of herself. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought I took care of myself that evening, even though I felt they tried to silence me, which is interesting.
It wasn't to silence you, but they wanted to meet. You came down on different sides, I think.
Well, the interesting thing was that the issue that night was white supremacy. And one of the things that they were doing was saying, it's not that important. And it's interesting that shortly after that, we had the tragedy in Oklahoma. And then after that, there was the O.J. Simpson case coming to this forefront of racial tension, drawing out the tension that's been in our culture for such a long time.
And what do you say about white supremacy today?
Part of what I say is that white supremacy, first of all, isn't a white thing. It's part of this culture. It's part of how all of us have been taught to think about difference. Who's better, who's inferior, who's superior. I prefer white supremacy to racism precisely because it says that we're all being socialized to think along certain dualistic lines. And that the notion of that which is light or white being better, that which is dark or black being worse, bad, inferior, is something that everyone in the culture is socialized to think.
I'm going to speak about some political events and some recent events first, and two things I want to talk about, three things actually. First is the Million Man March. What did you think?
Well, the Million Man March was something that I deeply and profoundly opposed. I opposed it because I'm not one of those people who thinks you can separate messages from the messengers. I think that while the idea of black male solidarity and unity is a fine idea, just as who could not be moved by the images of all of those men, but underlying those images is a political ideology, is a way of thinking about family. I mean, just the other night I was giving a lecture at Dartmouth and some young black men were saying, but how can it be wrong for black men to oppose welfare? And I said, well, it's one thing to say that black men should assume responsibility for families, and another thing to look realistically at our job and employment situation and to say what would actually happen to many single-parent households that women head if, in fact, there was not aid to assist women in a process of change and transition, many of whom are hoping for jobs that don't exist.
What ideology, back to what you were saying in terms of message and the messenger, what ideology do you believe was being promulgated? Was it the Nation of Islam?
No,
or
actually,
was it some other ideology?
I would say that first and foremost, it was patriarchy. I mean, when someone tells me in their mission statement that no nation sends its women to war while the men sit in the kitchen, and, the situation of race in America right now is like war, and the men are going to Washington, that to me is a real gendered dialogue about conventional masculinity, which denies a history of race relations where the engagement of black women in resistance struggle has been so meaningful and so crucial.
Would it have been less effective as effective or much more effective if women had been part of it?
Let me go on record as saying, Charlie, I have no trouble if men want to march by themselves.
Yeah.
I feel like men could march for days by themselves, and I'd sit at home and cook and clean if they were marching for principles and values and politics that would actually aid black self-determination. I happen to think that patriarchy has been deadly for the planet and for black men.
Okay, perhaps it has, but who says that they were marking for patriarchy? I mean, that's what I'm sure.
Well, I mean, that's why we have
I'm
to
not sure
listen
that
to...
was the. If you talk to all those people that were there, which I didn't, but I've talked to people who did talk to them and wandered through the crowd without television cameras and had lots of conversations, and it didn't seem to be a patriarchy. It seemed to be about responsibility, and it seemed to be about some sense of self-esteem, and it seemed to be about fathers and sons and fathers and daughters.
But that sense of responsibility was connected to particular notions about the family, not about self-responsibility first, but it was the idea that, in fact, the old idea that men acquire self-esteem by the degree to which they can be providers and protectors. That is what patriarchy says to us. And what we know is that a lot of men provide, a lot of men protect, and they still have difficulties with self-esteem.
Have black women, in your judgment, endorsed feminism and responded to it?
Well, in Killing Rage, I try to talk about the fact that that black women have questioned feminism because of our recognition that race is always a factor. So there's been a calling attention to racism within the women's movement, particularly the racism of privileged class women who were saying, you know, we're victimized because of certain issues that black women did not see as an occasion for victimization.
Did it put black women against white women then?
Yes, I think the core reformist-based feminist movement very much pitted black women against white women by the fact that the discourses of women of color and black women were left out. For example, the early on a major thesis of feminism was women need to get out into the workforce. Right. Well, masses of black women were already into the workforce and weren't liberated.
Masses of poor women were already out in the workforce.
And that kind of work, who is it liberating for? So there was a real distinction between those women Betty Friedan was describing as sitting at home, many of whom were well educated, had been educated in the Ivy League or the Seven Sisters, you know, and weren't doing anything. And those masses of women who were in factories, who were, you know, cleaning people's homes, who did not see work as central to liberation and who were in fact fantasizing about the days of their lives when they wouldn't have to work. So there's a chapter in Killing Rage about black and white female relations where I say, until our relationships improve, until black women and white women understand each other better, there will not be an end to racism in this society.
O.J. Simpson, what do you think? I mean, about the, not so much, obviously I'm fascinated by whether people thought he did it or not. But beyond that, are you surprised by the reaction to it? And
I was deeply surprised and troubled by the reaction to it because I feel like I was one of the people who religiously tried not to watch the case precisely because I felt in respect to the fact that this was a case rooted in domestic violence. Here again, I don't think that people can pretend that in fact somehow the domestic violence doesn't matter. This tragedy would not have happened if male violence against women was not so acceptable in our culture. Because there is a line leading up to the tragedy. Whether we know who murdered this woman or not, we do know that a whole life that was structured around acceptance of violence was a part of how this couple related to one another. And that, to me, made me feel like once this becomes entertainment, once the camera is focused on O.J. Simpson, people will forget that at the heart of this is both male violence and male violence against women, because we've not heard anybody speculate that a group of women were outside that house chopping up anybody. So clearly, we cannot get away from the dilemma of male violence in our culture and male violence against women. And I try to hold to that as a way of not deflecting attention away from the fact that this was not an issue of race. I mean, that the case itself was not an issue of race. How we interpret it, how we witnessed it as a culture, it was racialized, but the heart of it still, for me, remains male violence against women.
But what about those, including Johnny Cochran, I guess, who would say, no, it was about race because it was about race, and it's because of the attitude of the LAPD?
Well, I think one, even before we knew anything about the attitude of the LAPD, we know that whenever sexuality is involved and gender in our culture, people often prefer to talk about race. Race is easier for people it's easier to racialize something, because if we make it a case of gender, we have to see a man like O.J. Simpson as very empowered by class and by patriarchy. If we make it a case of race, we can see him as always and only a victim. And so, of course, it was very important for men in general, and Cochran in particular, himself, according to his ex-wife, someone who is no stranger to domestic violence, to act as though the only issue here is one of racial injustice.
Bell Hooks' Killing Rage, Ending Racism. This is a collection of essays about a whole range of subject matter having to do with men and women and gender and violence and rage and a lot of other things. My friend Cornel West says, unlike most black intellectuals, she writes with a sense of urgency about the existential and psychocultural dimensions of African American life, especially those spiritual and intimate issues of love, hurt, pain, envy, and desire, usually probed by artists. Her books help us not only to decolonize our minds, soul, and bodies, on a deeper level, they touch our lives. It is difficult to read a Bell Hooks essay or text without enacting some form of self-examination or self-inventory, which is exactly what she would like for you to do. Thank you. Pleasure. We thank you for joining us. See you next time.
That is Bell Hooks.
I think Bell Hooks is one of those people, like, whenever we're talking about Black issues, you're going to hear a Bell Hooks quote. Someone's going to bring up Hooks,
yeah, if you're one of those people, if you're somebody who's taken African American studies, then you definitely have encountered Bell Hooks' work, especially now posthumously, now that she's passed. I think a lot of at college level, folks will be including her even the most recent of her work into their curricula. And I have a friend, I'm really excited about the fact that I was talking to my best friend, one of my best friends, who's back home in Delaware. We're unlikely friends. We're really close friends, but people would think that we're unlikely because he's a cisgender straight white man. And I'm obviously not. I know.
Cisgender straight white.
And he was telling me about his son, who's in high school and taking Black American Studies in school. And I just think that that's so great that his son's not Black, that none of their, are Black. And I think that's just great that they offer that class. And I was really happy to hear that his son was taking the course. That's obviously it's personal and anecdotal, but hopefully his son knows who Bell Hooks is.
I'm really excited to talk about our next cultural icon, because I think this would be of particular importance to you, Pep, as a New Yorker, as a dancer. This person's impact is so far-reaching and has been, just referenced and influencing nonstop. So let's talk a little bit about Alvin Ailey. Alvin Ailey was a trailblazing American choreographer and dancer who played a pivotal role in shaping the landscape of modern dance. Born on June 5th, 1931 in Rogers, Texas, Ailey's impact on the world of dance is immeasurable. You can't even put a quantity on the impact. Ailey's journey into the world of dance began in an unlikely place, the Horton Dance Company, where he found inspiration under the guidance of Lester Horton. In 1958, Ailey founded the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, a groundbreaking institution that would become a driving force in the promotion of African American culture and expression through dance. Ailey's choreography was known for its fusion of various different styles, incorporating elements of jazz, ballet, and of course, modern dance. One of his most iconic works, Revelations, premiered in 1960 and remains a masterpiece that explores the African American experience through movement and emotion. This groundbreaking piece became a staple in the repertoire of many dance companies around the world, and still is to this day. Beyond his artistic contribution, Alvin Ailey was a visionary leader and advocate for racial diversity in the arts. He sought to break down barriers and challenge stereotypes through his choreography, showcasing the richness of African American culture on this. Let me start back over. Beyond his artistic contributions, Alvin Ailey was a visionary leader and advocate for racial diversity in the arts. He started to break down barriers and challenge stereotypes through his choreography, showcasing the richness of African American culture on the stage. Ailey's commitment to social change and inclusivity has left a lasting legacy, inspiring countless dancers and choreographers to embrace diversity in their work. Alvin Ailey received numerous accolades during his lifetime, including the Kennedy Center Honors in 1988 and a posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2014. Although he passed away on December 1st, 1989, his impact on the world of dance endures through the continued success and influence of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. Today, the company continues to thrive, showcasing Alvin Ailey's vision and commitment to artistic excellence and cultural representation.
My company is now 27 years old. I started having a company in 1958 in New York City here, and I have seen in my own country and throughout the world an explosion of interest in dance. Of course, there are many countries like your own where dancing is much older than it is in the United States. So you have always had a dance explosion in Egypt. But my company and many others of its type and other kinds of companies in this country have caused a major revolution in culture around the world, yes, by the way we have put together our forms of dance. We are many kinds of dance here in America. We are ballet, we are modern dance, we are jazz dance, we are ethnic dance. We are many things. And I think probably because my company brings together all of these disparate elements have served to cause this kind of cultural revolution among our young people. Very much. I was born in the southern part of our country, in Texas, in the South, and I grew up as a child among people who sang gospel songs, who sang blues, who sang work songs, who sang our black folk music. I lived in that part of our country until I was 12 years old, and I was very influenced by my own family, for example, who danced at home, by the people on the streets who danced, by folk singers who came through our little town, singing blues and lullabies and telling us what happened in other towns. All of this came into my work very deeply, and I'm very, very deeply affected by my black roots, yes. My work is very, very influenced by my black heritage, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I think that that is one of the reasons that my company in particular is so popular around the world, is because we bring a very vibrant picture of the black experience to the world. And yes, I'm very, very influenced by my black roots, and I'm very, very proud of that. I'm not so sure about that. I have a hard enough time keeping it together here in the States. I think that inevitably there is some influence as one travels around the world. We, after all, have been touring the world since 1962, sponsored by our State Department. And I think that we have spread our message, the message of our kind of movement, our approach to dance throughout the world. And as I have traveled in some of the same places years later, I have seen some of our influences, yes, as well as the influences of some of our great Americans who also labor in the same field. The influence of a woman named Martha Graham, a very great choreographer, a great inventor of movement, I think pervades the dance field throughout the world. The inventions of Merce Cunningham in the avant-garde field have influenced the world. I think my taking black folk material has inspired other countries and other choreographers to take their own material and use it in a theatrical way. And I'm very proud of that also. Yes. I mean, the blues, for example. I mean, I lived with the blues as a child. I mean, as music, as feeling, and the blues are the basis of a great deal of our contemporary music. I mean, our rock and roll music, our disco music, is all based on the blues, and I mean, so it's an important part. The blues not only has inspired movement and other forms of music, but a whole movement of people expressing themselves, expressing their most intimate feelings. I personally believe that my greatest works are the works that are the most personal to me. And I think that's been proven time and time again with other choreographers around the world, that these ballets that come out of our deep personal feelings, out of our roots, are the ones that endure. Yes. Yes, how are you? I'm very happy to be with you. Very well. Yes. Well, that's quite a question. I'd like to be understood by both. Being a person who comes from the South and who comes from a rather poor background, from my people were farmers. My people are people who work with the land. I had always wanted to have the kind of company which they could understand. So I'm very happy when the intellectuals understand what we do, but I'm even prouder when our ordinary people can understand our work. I am what you call a non-elitist. I don't believe that dancing is just for those folks who can afford to go to the great opera houses of the world. I believe that the dance is for everybody. We know very well that people danced in the temples. Dancing is very ancient. Dancing is a part of all of our souls. Dancing is a part of our lives. It's our bodies. It's our souls moving. So I believe that the dancing is for everybody on all levels, intellectual or not. I want to dance. I want to make dances for the people. I've always tried to make a company which would appeal to all levels of society, and I'm still trying to do that. Absolutely. Both. I want them to discuss it. I try to make programs in my ballet which are educational, which are entertaining, which are exciting, which tell people something about themselves. I try to make programs which hold up a mirror to the people that we're dancing for. I try to do something for people that tells them how beautiful they are. My dances are about human beings. I'm celebrating the human spirit. And that's what dancing is to me. It's a celebration. It's a life celebration. It's a celebration about what we all are, how wonderful we are together. It's a celebration about how alike we all are in this world. You're welcome. Well, I understand. Yes, I understand now. Well, I'm not trying to make it national or black or white or green or any of those national elements which make up our country. I'm trying to make a universal kind of statement. I think that all great art is universal in its implication. I think that that if it is true, if it comes out of a true impulse, if it, of course, has some kind of form, if it has energy, if it has invention, if it has honesty, then it's valid, whether it serves its national origins or not. It happens that we as Americans are a very diverse country. We are a country of many, many peoples. We're a melting pot. And so our nationalism is a kind of multinationalism. I mean, our influences are Egyptian, for example. Our influences are Romanian, they're Polish, they're Asian, they're Japanese, they're South American, they're African. So all of this comes to play in the dances that we see in America. We have very great ballet companies here, for example. We have developed a great kind of American ballet in the style of the New York City Ballet and American Ballet Theater. We have younger modern dancers who are inventing new forms every day. I live in New York City, and downtown in our lofts, at this very moment, hundreds of young choreographers are inventing new ways of moving, of putting things together in a theatrical way. Out on our West Coast is another form of dance. In all the cities throughout this country, there are young choreographers, young groups, all making new things, as well as the traditional ballet companies and traditional modern dance companies like my own, making their own kind of national dance. There is no way to put your finger on what it is because it is so diverse in this country. We do have our folk dances as well. We have many groups in the South mainly, which are devoted, and in the West, which are devoted to doing our own kind of clog dances, our own kind of tap dances, our own kind of square dances. But America is a very diverse country, so its culture and its outlook on dance, its choreographic output is also very diverse. Well, when I make a dance personally, I don't start to try to make it international. Yes? Hello? Are you there? Hello?
They are changing their tapes right now. They will get right back with you.
I see, okay. Yes, I'm here. Yes. In Giza. Oh, really? When? Yes. During our Metropolitan Opera season? How are you? More slowly. Okay. I think I started to say that when I start to make a dance, and I think that any artist really does not start to try to make it international. We're simply trying to be honest to what the theme is, honest to whatever one is trying to say. I have never tried to say, well, I'm making international dance. I'm going to make something that is universal in its implication. I try to do something which is honest to myself, honest to my experience. I filter it through my experiences as an artist. And if it turns out well and turns out to be universal, then I'm very happy. I just happen to believe that all great art is universal. And of course, one doesn't always make great ballets. I mean, I make failures, and I've seen many of the choreographers who work with us make failures also. One of the things that we must be allowed to do as artists, as choreographers, is to experiment. We must be allowed to fail. We must not feel, for example, that you must always be successful. I think that if you feel that you must always be successful, you tend to pressure yourself too much. You tend to make dances for the wrong reason. I think we must make dances because we feel that it's something we must say. And so, I mean, that's what I do. And I don't always succeed, but I succeed for myself because it's honest always. How many choreographers do we have represented on the panel there in Cairo? Huh? Yeah, I'm concerned. This the same answer? Hello? I'm curious about on the panel how many choreographers there are. Yes. I mean choreographers there on the panel. Marvelous. Fantastic. I would like to know what your choreographers feel about the same question. Is it Magda I'm speaking to? I'm very curious about your point of view about the same question. How do you feel about making dances? Do you try to make an international statement, or are you simply doing what you feel? Yes, I'm very curious about Egyptian dance. We know too little about your culture in our country. Yes. Right. Uh-huh. Aren't you sweet to say that? Keep doing it. The key word, the operative word. The operative word is tenacity. You have to keep doing it. You have to believe in yourself. You have to train the young. You have to keep at your government to keep you well funded. You have to build an audience. Why do you laugh? I know. Well, we have the same problem. We have the same problem in our country. We have to educate our administrators. We have to educate our legislators always, especially to the dance, to the arts in general, and to the dance specifically. But that is a lifetime's work. That is something that you will always have to do. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your knowledge. You have to believe in your creativity. You have to believe strongly in what you are doing and go on doing it. I mean, you're always going to do it against odds. It's always going to be difficult, but you have to believe in the beauty of creativity. You have to believe in the beauty of what you're making. I always say that I'm making something where there was nothing before. You're creating something in space, new forms. You have to believe in that very strongly. I think that Egypt is a very rich country. I mean, your myths. It seemed to me that the young people who saw us in Giza when we were there some years ago loved dancing. They loved the whole idea of moving the body. There is in the world today the philosophy that the philosophy of the body. We have coming back to ourselves again through the body. And I'm sure that that's true in Egypt. I'm sure that there is a passion for movement in Egypt. And you must seize upon this passion among your public, among your legislators, among your educators, among your creative young people, and make that live. It will not be easy. It is not easy. But you've chosen a very difficult thing to do, but I think that you must do it. But you do this kind of thing because you have to do it. And I think that all of you gathered there with your degrees, with your government support, though it's difficult, can do this. I know that it's possible. Not verbal enough. I really am not. Yeah, well, it's tough. It's always been tough. It's been tough with me from the very beginning. I've been doing it in the United States since 1958, and it's been difficult all the time. But what has come out of it, the result has been so wonderful. I have produced wonderful people. The people, it's what it's all about. I mean, I have watched people grow from my school. I have a very wonderful school, as I'm sure your Ballet Institute is, as I'm sure you're all dedicated to the young. I've watched young people grow from fledgling dancers to performers to choreographers to company directors. And that's really what it's all about. It's really all about planting the seeds, about being a progenitor, about inspiring, about giving of yourself. I mean, I'm sure that all of you there give much more than you really get back. Well, that's what we're here for. I mean, that is our mission. We are to give. You have to keep on being tenacious about wanting to give this. You must go on creating your ballets. I don't know what your physical situation is like. I mean, I don't know if you have wonderful studios and wonderful classrooms and wonderful musicians. We always want more than we have. We believe in the fantasy, we choreographers and teachers. And when that fantasy dies, then we no longer want to do this. You must keep the fantasy about what it is you want to do, and it will come to you. You know, people will come. It will happen. You must keep the faith, as one of our great Americans has said. Of course, no, it was not that. I mean, being a black person in the United States and being born when I was born in 1931, I had some rather rough times racially when I was living as a child in the South, and those racial memories are brought about the first ballets I did when I became a choreographer in New York City. I knew Lester Horton. I worked with him for 5 years before he died. I think you know that. He was a great, inspiring man. He was the man who inspired me to have a company of people of all colors and sizes and artistic inclinations, a company which enfolded the idea of the universal man. And I wanted to be like Lester Horton. I wanted very much to do that. But I also wanted to say something about my black roots. My first idea was to make a black folkloric company, was to have an enormous company, very much like the, let's say like the Ballet Folklorico de Mexico or the Bayanihan Company of the Philippines, and take black material, say 50 marvelous black dancers from the South and 30 musicians and 20 designers and 4 folk singers and all of those, put them all together and make a black folkloric company. That was my idea until I arrived in New York City in 1954, where I met all the moderns. I didn't know anything about modern dance except what Lester Horton had taught me. And when I arrived in New York City, I immediately got involved with Martha Graham, as you did, with Charles Weidman, with the great Jose Limon, with Hanya Holm. I saw all the trends there. I saw many concerts in a very vibrant dance scene where there was a concert every night, and decided that these works needed to be preserved. I was very concerned about black dances, of course, and I decided that the black dancer was much more than a folkloric dancer, that it was a universal, well-trained, sophisticated animal, and should be doing all kinds of things. So I decided that I would have a company which highlighted what the black achievement was in dance at the moment, which was black history in a way, my black roots, which was sophisticated, as sophisticated as the latest kind of new movement, and which preserved preserved dance in general. So I made a repertory company. What mine is actually is a national modern dance company. I have produced in the 27 years works by some 50 choreographers, some 150 ballets by 50 different choreographers. So the preservation aspect is also very important. The classical ballet has done that for many years. I mean, the classical ballet has its Swan Lakes and Coppelias and Cinderellas and Romeo and Juliets that have lasted for hundreds of years, some of these works. And the modern dance classics like Hanya Holm's Trend and Jose Limon's Misa Brevis slip away. So one of my aims is to preserve as well as to celebrate the black heritage. And I think that you in Egypt must do the same thing. You must preserve. There's a very great American, I wish I had made this up, who says that you can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And I believe very strongly in that. And I think that's one of the tenets that we must hold on to in our seeking to make dance a pure and expressive and popular art form. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, anytime we're outside the country and you're with a group of Americans and we're 30 dancers and with technicians and costume designers and stage managers, we're 40 people altogether. We're highly visible. I mean, a predominantly black group is highly visible wherever it is in the world. So we feel and we are representatives of our country, whether our government is sponsoring a particular tour or not. Yes, we all feel, but we always feel that we're representatives of what our culture is, and we carry ourselves in a way which befits that image. Well, I certainly enjoyed Egypt. We played in Giza under the Sphinx. And I'm not just saying that. I loved your country. I mean, your country has given us so much. I mean, your myths, your legends have permeated the dance throughout the world. I mean, Martha Graham, myself. I mean, opera, ballet. You must be very proud of your traditions. I mean, what you have given us is enormous. Yes, I mean, Egypt, we've been touring since 1962. I've found some places that are just extraordinary. I love Paris, of course. I love London. I love Moscow has its charms. Leningrad, Rio de Janeiro, Tokyo. We're everywhere. I've grown to love a lot about all of these places, all of these cultures. I've taken all of that into my soul. And of course, in every place there's wonderful dancing. I mean, on different levels, of course. In every country we find ballet, we find the national dance, we find some kind of movement of modern dance in every place that we go. And I take that all into myself. It is an education. I'm sure that there is some Egyptian sand from under the Sphinx in a ballet that I made last October called Isba. It's a very rich experience traveling around, and your country has added a great deal to that. I hope you should be proud of that. Can you tell me something about about what your national ballet does. Are you subsidized? Are you well? What kind of productions do you do? Do you have enough money? How many dancers do you have in your company? How are they trained? Are they happy? What are your dreams for Egyptian dance? Well, it depends. It depends very much on the choreographer. The modern dance came about in this country because we wanted to express more human emotions. The ballet seems to me to express those refined kind of elite emotions, about princes and nutcrackers and all of the swan queens and all of that. The modern dance came about in this country as a revolution against that kind of thing because the people who made it, namely people like Isadora Duncan and Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn and Catherine Dunham, a very great black choreographer, wanted to say something about the man on the street. They wanted to talk about a guy who had problems, who couldn't pay the rent, They wanted to talk about the ordinary people. So the modern dance was born out of that impulse. I mean, Isadora Duncan tore off her tutu and corsets and toe shoes and said, let's get down and do it the way the people do it. Let's walk around the dirt, And that's what I like about it. That's what I liked about the modern dance when I came to it, was that I could say something about my people who were walking in the dirt with bare feet in Texas, in the South. And I think that is what it's all about. But there are very sophisticated choreographers, and I'm sure that you are one of them, who can make emotion out of the classical technique. There's a very great choreographer whom I'm sure you know, named Anthony Tudor, who with the classical technique makes the most refined statements, the most distilled emotions. So I think it's a question of talent, But nowadays we use everything. I and my company encourage the concept of the total dancer, the dancer who can dance in all styles. And I think that your dancers are probably doing the same things in your ballets. They're wedding the classical technique, a very strong classical technique with all the modern dance styles to make it all more expressive, to make it all total dance. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the dancer being able to move from ethnic dance to classical dance to the Graham technique, to the Horton technique, to things that I might invent. I'm interested in the total dancer. And therefore I'm interested in total emotion. I'm very interested in feeling in dancers. I don't like dancers who let people watch them dance, for example. I tell my kids, I say, look, go out there and show the people what you're feeling. Do the correct steps, but make them know that you are a human being. I believe in the cult of the individual. I believe that we are all individuals, that what we are is people. What we are individually is what we contribute to this world. And I like to see that in dance. And I'm sure you do that in your choreography. I mean, it's the way we are going now. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, it does. It's a tough scene. It's a tough thing to be in the United States also. I mean, not everybody. I mean, there aren't people out there in the world looking for dancers constantly. My school is in New York City, where there's a very active dance scene. I mean, there's television dance, there's the Broadway musical that people go through, there is MTV, there are lots of little dance groups, there are the major companies situated there. So there is the whole big boiling always of dance. But even so, one is not assured that one is going to get a job once one has all these fantastic techniques under one's belt. A lot of the people who come to us are people who, yes, the young people who come to us want to be dancers. And a lot of them who come through my school end up in my company or in some other company. But dancing is very much in the United States a kind of calling. You have to be called. You have to really want to do it. It's a chance that you take. I mean, there's a chance that you will not get into a company. They all know that. But the great chance is that the great thing that I celebrate in my school is that they will be enriched, whether they become dancers or not, that they will gather a sense of themselves, that they will become more self-possessed, especially sometimes in the minority groups, the black groups, the Latin groups, we need to encourage our young people to have a greater sense of themselves. And I think a great dancing is a great way to do that. I have some 5,000 students who come through my school annually, 110 classes a week, 35 instructors, workshops, an enormous program for children, a program for visually impaired teenagers, of which I'm very proud, a workshop company of college-age students, of 26 dancers who do their own choreography and make their own costumes, an apprentice company of 16 from whom I take dancers into the first company. So I'm surrounded by wonderful teachers, wonderful musicians, and wonderful people who are aspiring to be dancers. And it's all very inspiring. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not necessary really for all of these people to turn out to be professional dancers, but the experience, what it gives to their lives, how it makes them feel about themselves, how our school-age children add the dance discipline to their educational disciplines, how I have seen young people who come in with negative feelings about themselves, look at themselves in a mirror, and I'm sure you know this also, with some training, and turn out to feel like they are really a part of what is going on in the world. And that, to me, this perception of self, this creation of this perception of self, is what is so wonderful about dancing. And it does it, and I'm sure your audiences get that also. That is what it is important to me, that we are giving something back to our public. The arts, to me, are basically a social statement. You know, all great arts, to me, in my mind, are social. And of the people. They came from the people, and I'm trying to give them back to the people. They're a reflection of our culture. The arts of any culture, to me, are a manifestation of the greatest part of that culture, the most beautiful part of what it is. And that's what I'm trying to do. As an actor, I had a career as an actor. I gave it up. It was too much for me. I decided that I could not do both. And I started the company in 1958, and in 1961 I did several plays on Broadway without ever having studied as an actor. And I was always torn. My first love was choreography and dancing, but some producers came to me and directors and said, you know, you should be an actor because you act when you're dancing. So I got involved with it. But I soon discovered that acting was just as finite as discipline as dancing, that you really could not play with acting. You had to devote yourself to that it was another kind of discipline. And I had to choose, and I chose to do what I'm doing now and to leave acting alone. Well, no, I have auditions yearly, and and dancers come from all over the country. But yes, but I have access to all the people at the school. I have half of the people in my company of 30 dancers, the main company, come from the apprentice company, which is a group of 16 who travel around to universities and colleges doing things in situations that are too small for the big company. My great concern is to get the dancing out to the people, you know. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know how it is there in Egypt, probably the same. A lot of people that I want to reach don't feel welcome in the concert hall. One of our jobs is is audience building, to educate people to what the dance is. So I believe very firmly in going out to the people. So the apprentice company's job is to go out to the people. The workshop's job is to go out to the people, to go out to elementary schools, to go out to junior high schools, to go out to all of those, to senior citizens' homes, to go out to prisons, and take the message of the dance to all of these people. So it has to go out. Do you do that kind of thing in Egypt? We believe very much in lecture demonstrations where we explain what it is we're doing. And we use a lot of national material also, so that people feel like they're understanding what it is, as well as, wonderful dances on point and things like that. I didn't say I was going to choreograph an Egyptian ballet. What I said was that I made a ballet last October with Middle Eastern influences, and I'm sure that it's called Isba. It's called Isba, and it's an abstract ballet. It's an abstract ballet, but it has feelings of the Middle East, and I think a lot of that feeling came from Egypt. But what of your modern dance? I mean, are there no small groups? Does your wonderful dancer there not dance with a small group? I mean, the younger people seem to understand very much modern dance, the jazz, the explorations that people like that I'm sure that you're doing in your classes in modern dance. It's closer to their pulse than some of the classical things, And we're very involved here with the young. I hope so too. It's been a great pleasure talking to all of you. And I just want to tell you that we're all doing the same thing, whether we're doing it here in America or there in Egypt. The message of love that we're trying to communicate through dance, the lesson of beauty, the lesson of projecting our own cultures, is something that is so important to us, to the future, to our young people, to project universal feelings of love and brotherhood throughout the world. I'm very, very happy to have met you all in this remote way. And I look forward to seeing you either here in the United States or in your own country.
I'm not a trained dancer. I was always someone who could move. I know that you went to school and you went to art school.
I did.
I went to a school that had art. I went to a school that had art. And you went to an art school. And also in New York City, was there a thing amongst because I know that there's the Alvin Ailey, there's the Martha Grahams, there's the Bibbidi Bops, there's all these people with their influence. Did you see a lot of that when you were dancing?
Well, I went to, I mean, I did go to a school and I was in the musical theater program, which meant that we had a dance program, a dance department. And most of the influences on our, we were forced to, but I loved to take classical. We did take classical, but most of our, classes and the dance curriculum were musical theater based. And so tap, jazz, and ballet is what we took, which is typical for dance class, but we didn't do a lot of modern. And a lot of these, the Black sort of great choreographers in American dance were in modern. And so, you have the Catherine Dunhams and the Arthur Mitchells and Pearl Primus, Judith Jamison, obviously Alvin Ailey. And so those folks, and Alvin Ailey, obviously the Alvin Ailey schools in New York. And so we would oftentimes interact with all these dancers from other places, whether it was at the club or wherever, all the art school students find each other. And so their influence, Alvin Ailey's influence and sort of legacy is passed down through the school, through the students who still actually, they're still here, right? The students are going every single day. I actually had to do a report before coming to school because I was waitlisted for college. And I had to do a report on dance through Black culture in dance throughout history. And so that was really when I got a chance to really grab onto a lot of these figures. And they were, trailblazers, literally.
And I believe that Alvin Ailey was on 8th and 59th. 7?
It's on 9th.
I remember walking up to Columbus Circle from the clubs to take the train sometimes because it was better. Sometimes I want to get a little walk, and I always walk by the Alvin Ailey School and be like, "Oh my God, what are they in there doing? What are they in there making?" Not at those hours. There were probably just custodians. At those hours, there were probably just a couple of
people cleaning in the back.
and
they're getting ready.
Yeah. But during the day, I mean, as a nightlife person, a lot of times we don't even see New York City during the
Yeah,
day.
there's a lot of our friends that went
There
there
were-
that studied at Ailey. And it's not just for Black students anymore. It's a renowned dance academy. And they have classes, and there's their troupe. Celebrity makeup artist Deja Smith was an Ailey dancer. So many of our friends that were dancers went through Ailey.
So big shout out to Alvin Ailey, who also has a tribute in the Madonna tour. We have a tribute to people who have passed due to complications from HIV and AIDS, and Alvin Ailey has a really big picture. So every night on stage, I look up at this giant, 3-story picture of Alvin Ailey, just in all of his majestic glory.
Wow.
Oh, and I do want to say too, real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Cecilia Gentili, a New York City cabaret, nightlife, queer, trans icon, who was also on the show Pose with Peppermint. And I just want to give her some flowers and pay my condolences to Cecilia's loved ones and friends and family.
Well, I have to obviously echo that. Cecilia and I were friends. She was my mentor, the first person that counseled me when I started my medical transition back in 2011, and guided me, very lovingly through the medical system, the health care system, if we can use that word, in New York, and gave me some sage advice that I still use to this day when speaking about LGBTQ issues. And, among many, many other things, she was definitely a mentor. So it was a delight to see her in the same episode with me on Pose. But her impact was just like so indelible. That at her last memorial last week, at the first memorial last week, there must have been there was over 1,000 people who came to the small little churches, which is where they have the Black Trans Liberation Kitchen down in Washington Square Park. And there was pretty much people from all walks of life, and people that I hadn't seen in years, people that I didn't know knew Cecilia, and so, yeah, look her up. She was an amazing woman. She was a wife. She was a mother. And I think her performance spirit sort of rose later on in life. Or at least like professionally, she became an actress professionally and on TV. She got those opportunities that came through later on. I'm sure she was probably very theatrical and acting and everything younger, but for a while she really dedicated herself to guiding folks through the healthcare system, mental health care and physical health care, for more than a decade, at a time when being trans and getting healthcare was not something that was not synonymous, because there was a major time where if you were trans and wanted to medically transition, you had to go outside onto the street and find someone who had some cement or something from the hardware store that would inject it into your body, which is ironically what she portrayed in Pose, if anybody saw that. And so I'm grateful.
Best episode of the show.
Yeah.
Best episode. Your episode was the best episode of Pose. It was so good.
I'm grateful that I didn't myself and many others were saved from having that be our only choice when it comes to sort of getting our medical transition started. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing her up. And yeah, that's wonderful. So she will join the icons in the sky, and we have many more to talk about, but we've run out of time.
If you all are people, before we get out of here, I was going to say, if you are someone who watches us over on YouTube, please, when you watch, leave a comment. Comment below. It really helps the algorithm. So if you'd like to give us a thumbs up, if you're listening, go ahead and subscribe. and just leave a comment and let us know. Maybe ask us questions, maybe give us ideas for things you want us to talk about in the future, maybe guests you want to have on the show. Maybe you are the guest you want to be on the show. So just let us know.
And, please engage about the conversation. We'd like to hear more of your thoughts. Like, for instance, on this episode, who are some cultural icons that you haven't heard? I mean, we only did a few on here today, but, who are some cultural icons that you'd like to hear us talk about on our next episode, which will be coming out next week? And if there's people that we missed and you want to share what you happen to know about these people, then keep the conversation going, please. Don't just come into the comments and say it's fashion.
That's part of your contribution.
Oh, okay. On that note, we do want to say thank you so much to our to all of our production team, including our executive producer Tracy Marquez, senior producer Charlene Westbrook, whose voice you almost heard, producer Corey Nixon, and post producer Amelia Ritaler. And of course, our music is by La Femme Bear. And if you're listening to this the week that we drop it, stick around for next week's episode. You'll have to tune in next week where we will continue for Black History Month, our cultural icons. And if you're listening to this like at the end of Black History Month, stay tuned because the next episode is starting in just a few minutes. Ow. See y'all next time.
Bye, everyone.